Good morning everyone and welcome to the lecture this morning. Our lifestyles are changing rapidly in the 21st century and the changes have a lot to do with the digital revolution. One major change which has taken place in the last 10 years is currently transforming how we'll be looking after our health in the future, how we will interact with medical professionals and how much more we will know about our own bodies, lifestyle choices and the diagnosis of diseases. Technology has advanced medicine, how we respond to it, preventative measures and early detection rates for disease. Genotyping and genome sequencing are examples of technological advances which will completely alter how we live in the near future. And I would like to focus on this scientific breakthrough in this lecture. I will start with a brief explanation of what the human genome is, then outline the recent groundbreaking research and the subsequent consequences for our lives overall. Next, I will discuss the possible repercussions of how the findings may be applied, and finally, we will look at the overriding benefits of the science. Okay, let's start with the field of genomics, which is essentially the identification and sequencing of constituent genes and the application of such knowledge to medicine. The human genome is the complete code for everything in our bodies, and the first one was completely sequenced less than 10 years ago. The height of technological advances made this scientific breakthrough possible, something contemporary geneticists never thought they would see happen in their own lifetimes. It took 13 years to complete the sequencing and cost $2.7 billion. Skip forward a short time later to today, however, and it's now a fraction of this price at $5,000, having fallen from $48,000 3 years ago. Matt Possard of Illumina, the company which makes genome sequencing machines, states that people will be able to surf their own genome and find out everything about themselves, and that we are now in the era of science fiction. The concept is still in its infancy, but the potential here is infinite. The main breakthrough for medical research is the potential access to mass data due to the application of sequencing of a mass population. Joe Flatley, the CEO of Illumina, goes so far as to say that all newborn babies will have their genome sequenced at birth as vital data compilation for future health. The fact is that people are actually having their genome sequenced now, and the reality is that the National Health Service in the UK will have to deal with it in some way as members of the public become more aware of potential health risks and engage in self-diagnosis. For example, there will be more demand for solutions and advice on changes for preventative measures to health problems, as opposed to waiting until you are ill and then visiting a doctor. The current asymmetry which exists today, where the doctor has all the information and the patient just a little, is going to change, according to Ron Zimmern, who works for PhD, a genetics think tank. Zimmern describes it as a personal treasure trove for the UK, as we can link findings back to real people's health through NHS records. David Cameron, the UK's Prime Minister, has committed £100 million for the full sequencing of 100,000 patients, bringing a mass sample of medical data to take advantage of in terms of discovering the origins of diseases. In fact, a few years ago, there were 354 known disease-causing genes, whereas the figure today stands at 1,600. This demonstrates the speed with which this huge project is progressing, as we have found out more about the underpinning of illnesses in the last 2.5 years than we have ever known before in all of human history. The great hope, of course, is that genomics will transform medicine, create more cures, and inform people of necessary lifestyle changes for prevention of disease, in addition to informing us more about how our environment can affect our health. John Wilbanks of the consent to research project is for these reasons in great favour of people finding out information about their health and then sharing the results, as he believes that sharing data is the only way forward for medical research. Clinical studies thus forming the basis of any medical research, and the more people who can participate, the better for all. From the pooling of medical data, we can put forward statistically significant samples and start to measure ourselves through shared lifestyle choices, the shared interaction of our environment and our shared genotypes. We're then able to gather information on the outcomes of these shared experiences and subsequently the origins and thus diagnosis, possible cures and roots of diseases will be uncovered. People already share huge amounts of revealing information regarding their lifestyles, much to the benefit of marketing organisations through social networking sites such as Facebook. With respect to health, the results will be compiled in a similar manner, enabling a massive data project to revolutionise healthcare as we know it today. So far, I have outlined the exciting opportunities and potential of genotyping, but there is another side to the process, and one which will have to be carefully monitored as the science develops. I will now go on to discuss possible repercussions of genotyping. Just as there are misgivings with respect to networking sites such as Facebook and Google compiling masses of personal information about us, there are also similar misgivings with regards to the compilation of such sensitive matters as our health. With 6 billion base pairs in every genome, data held on the Amazon cloud is, of course, like all digital data, at risk of being hacked and leaked. Therefore, whether people choose to consent to share their information or not, the risk is always present that such highly personal information could reach the public domain without an individual's consent. Ruth Chadwick, who is the chair of the Human Genomes Ethics Committee in the UK, has posed another quite different concern regarding people knowing of potential diseases, even of an unborn child. In the case of diseases which may not occur for 50 years or more, would these result in a couple's decision to terminate a pregnancy, for example? For instance, a company called GenePix further encourages this genetic exploration of future offspring, as they will, for a fee, match your genes with potential spouses and make a virtual baby to check for recessives that may come together to create potential disease. Again, this seems to promote eugenics. For example, do we perhaps choose our spouses according to such access to medical information? The ethical questions raised through the availability of such genetic data have caused much controversy and political debate. Ron Zimmer, for example, vehemently opposes any genome sequencing of newborns, as they are unable to consent for themselves. And that, according to him, is totally unacceptable. He states that here the real danger may be that technology and the science will become driven by consumers. Another great concern is that few doctors have actually been trained in genomics and would be unsure of how to exploit such information. Again, however, we have the immense benefits to consider by sharing our personal medical data when we consider the insight gained into such life-debilitating and ultimately fatal diseases. It is these benefits that I would now like to move on to. To illustrate the extent of such insight into medical research, Max Little, director of the Parkinson's Voice Initiative, is currently researching the biomarkers of Parkinson's disease through voice recordings of birth-afflicted and non-afflicted people. So far, his diagnosis has 99% accuracy, and through a nationwide campaign, reached 6% of his target in just 8 hours of online activity. Again, this confirms the idea of people wanting to share their experiences and information, and how much valid research can be generated subsequently. Will Banks states that correlations between subtle variations in people can start to be teased out to create a statistically significant cohort, which can then be validated and compared with smaller studies. Daniel Kraft, chair of the Future Med programme, feels confident that eventually, as well as carrying our entire medical data in our phone, he also posits that we may have wearable devices in our clothes, which will periodically go off to inform us of any diagnosis, or a device in our blood, which could instantly detect plasma and therefore alert us to cancer. This does not seem too unrealistic, as we already have apps on our phones which can monitor our entire night's sleep and each phase of it, to apps which monitor everything we eat, and systems on our phones which can test our blood sugar levels. Jay Flatley states that we are now at the dawn of personalised healthcare, where medicine has a very real potential of becoming completely individualised. To conclude then, despite the risks and trepidation of sharing personal health data with others, people would not need to be encouraged to share if they did not want to, as on an international scale, sample sizes would be substantial enough to be statistically significant. Those who do opt to share their private health information, and this is currently happening, are made fully aware of the risks of consent and do so in the name of medical research, which they consider as more important, as such medical participants have always done, meaning nothing has really changed in this respect, as people know what they are signing up for. As for doctors not being trained in genomics, the medical profession will be forced to play catch-up and adapt to a new environment, which is moving at a phenomenal speed, aided largely by commercialization in terms of technical gadgets and apps for our phones, as Kraft has pointed out. Governments and think tanks will have to work closely in developing policies at the same pace as the science to ensure commercialization does not take over. The final point to take away with you is that all in all, the great breakthroughs in terms of disease knowledge haven't happened yet, but it seems inevitable that they will, and when they do, the ethical questions will also have to be addressed, and how we do address them will shape the history of humankind. Thank you very much everyone, and have a good day.